technology and information and things of that nature. The door stay left the door. Can somebody close that, please? It's an important business factor to the extent, how many of you, I'm sure you've heard the research, for every dollar you invest in UX, $100 in return, because there's different formulas, but that's the most popular one. NASA did research, IBM did research, and they confirmed for every dollar that's spent, asterisk has to include real UX people, and it is dependent upon maturity level. If you spend a bunch of money on UX and the organization is not that mature, yes, it will give you ROI initially, but it won't be sustainable if you have the wrong people in place. If you have developers who all of a sudden they say they're UX people, but you weren't a UX person 2 weeks ago. I've seen this. I have screened resumes, and I've talked to people. This is happening all over the world. Visual designer. Oh yeah, I'm a UX person. People read articles. They'll read 5 or 10 articles, and then they think that they can do it. And that's why another reason why you have to separate UX, UI. So you see the activist thing that comes out. You have to separate UX from UI, because one of the problems with the UX, UI mindset, the mental model behind it, is that they think UX, UI is simple. And so consequently, and I know some great UI people, and these people put a lot of work into what they do. And I'm talking about, I've lived at the top of the food chain in the professional world, and you can't just throw things together. And UX, thinking about that big grid, there's nothing simple about it, especially if the person has more experience, because that means we're tapping into more of a personal repository of our own personal maturity level, which we're going to talk about in a bit. You tap into that to get something done. So when someone oversimplifies it, behind that comes lower salaries. Behind that comes your commoditization. Behind that comes devaluing. And the next thing that you know, you have people like the one, I won't mention the name since I'm live, but the one post I put out on the web on LinkedIn about a company that was hiring a UX person with a starting salary of $58,000. When starting in the Midwest, this was in the Midwest, starting salary in the Midwest 8, 9, 10 years ago was in the mid-70s. So now the salaries are coming down because the market is being flooded. Yes, sir?
You can spend as much time on this as you like, but when can you, as an individual, consider or call yourself a UX designer?
That's a great question. It's something that everybody has to evolve into. I'll say this quickly, and then we can talk about it at the end in more detail. When I first came aboard, and this is still true today, people today are just applying for a UX position and they get it. Again, remember the grid? The big infographic? When you say UX to somebody like me, when you say UX, you're speaking to all of that. If you say UX, it is all-inclusive. It means that you are multifaceted and multi-talented. If you're a researcher, then specify that. I'm a UX researcher. That's a research person that is contributing to the user experience. I might be doing ethnography. I might be doing remote testing. I might be doing a few gag, choke focus groups here and there. But you're a specialist. You're specialized. You have UX specialists. Someone told me that means that you're an entry-level person. Someone told me that once before. So, titles sometimes, you take them with a grain of salt. But to go straight into doing UX, and you certainly aren't going to learn UX in 6 months. But people are saying that and charging people $25,000 a year. You can't become a UX person in 6 months. I always tell people when I'm mentoring people, find a specialization. I'll show them that grid, or I'll talk to them about it. Find out what you like. You might not like information architecture. You might not like interaction design. You might love research. You might love usability. There are usability engineering, usability audit positions. That's how you get in. I came in, my first full-time gig, I was an information architect, and that's what I said I was. Matter of fact, I was responsible for that title becoming popular in our area because I kept laboring to have the titles changed because we were doing too much. So sort of in parallel with that, you're not a UX person until you're multifaceted. You simply aren't. If you're a researcher, you're a researcher. If you're an information architect, you're an information architect. Whatever it is, focus on that. If you're, there's some weird titles out there. I just saw another one that went up, and I just posted an LOL about it. Somebody said, here's a great position. Somebody might be interested. And they're probably wondering why I'm laughing. I'm laughing because it was ridiculous. It was a UX cognitive designer. Oh, how many titles are you going to come up with? UX is cognition. Cognitive psychology is a facet of UX. If you're doing UX and you're not considering cognitive load, then you're not doing UX. We don't need a title that says that. So somebody ate some White Castles, went to bed, and came up with that. You can't. No, it's not representative. So everybody's going to ease their way in, find a specialization. Then get back to what I tell mentees: find a specialization, make it your entry point, and then expand. And part of what I was going to say, I started as an information architect. When I left there, I started doing research. I started getting involved in UX strategy. So over the course of my career, I kept picking up. So it depends on where you work. That's another reason why UX is such a weird thing, title-wise, because, and you're going to see some of that here, based on where you work, I mean, there's no telling. It's like Wheel of Fortune, just spin the wheel. Where they're going to land because different companies do different things. That's why it's difficult to move. And because we expect the same thing when we move as UX professionals, moving from one company to another, you sort of expect the same thing. You're not going to get the same thing. You simply aren't. Especially if you have, and I'm going to get ahead of myself here a little bit, especially if you have most people running UX departments are not UXers. Some of them value and understand who they're dealing with and who's working for them and how to interact. The vast, vast, vast majority do not, which spells that's going to be nightmarish for you. When you get into a situation where they don't know, they don't understand. I was in a conversation not too long ago, and somebody said they saw a heuristic analysis that I did on something, and hey, Darren, but you missed one over here, and I just sat there and looked, and I didn't say a word. Again, emotional intelligence. But I didn't miss anything. It's not, and I'll come across sounding arrogant, but it's just a fact. It's impossible for me to miss something. I looked at it too many times. I applied too many scenarios. I ran through too many task flows. Is it possible to miss in general? It's possible because anybody can do anything, can miss anything. We can all do something like that. But no, in this particular case, it was absolutely not the case. That came out of a maturity level issue, and we're going to see that in a bit. And I'll take that one more question. And then
just as you're talking, I was curious about what you see as a trend in the rise of, because I do see the increase in UX jobs, which is interesting. But also there is, with the continual evolution and growth of software, there's also a rise in developer, UX maturity as well. And so you do have this generation of
hey, Josh.
You do have this generation of developers who have also crossed the aisles to some extent, or at least are contributing to the development. So yeah, share your opinion.
There's no such thing as a UX developer. People want my head on a platter for saying that. If you're a developer, just be a developer. If you're a developer, just code. You can't talk to a customer. It's probably real quick and dirty. You can't talk to a user. Find out what their pain points are, and change JavaScript to meet their needs. You simply can't do it. You're bound within the constraints of the language. UX professionals live with our head on a swivel. We adapt, we change, we shift, we move. Technology changes, we change. People user patterns and trends change, we change. JavaScript stays the same. Until they come out with a new version of it, it stays the same. JSON stays the same. There's nothing changing about it. Bootstrap, which I hear people crying about all the time, it's still, when they do an update, then more power to you, but you cannot go back and make changes. It's not anything, you will not change. When users change, code doesn't change. It does not change, and it certainly can't change to meet the needs of the users. So can you have a developer on your team? Yes, absolutely. Can a developer migrate into a UX role? Yes, but it's also, not only is it going to call for a change, and it's going to call for change in mindset, is going to call for change because the mental model of a UX professional and the mental model of a developer is markedly different.
Rightfully so.
You simply can't do it. Not to mention the fact that they have to get on board with emotional intelligence. And it's just another fact. Not to raise any sand. When I tell you I'm a UX activist, it's not to start anything. I'm just willing to say things that other people, that's why UX Uncensored, I'm willing to say things that other people won't, especially when they're making a lot of money. And if they say it, they're going to lose money. I'm not going to lose any money. And I care about people's development. I really do. And I want people to get the right things. I want companies to get things the right way. And if you bring in 10 developers to come in here, your work is going to be garbage. And that 1 to 100 investment ROI ratio, you will see none of it. You will see none of it. They can't manage. Anybody remember Office Space? Of course you do, right? They're not good with people. That was based on a known fact. IT people are like down there, engineers are 2 rungs below them. That IT people, when it comes to engaging with people, it's not a fertile ground for success. So when you bring them in there, part of UX is managing stakeholders. Well, you just threw that out the window. It's not going to happen. And on top of that, they're coming for you. You're a UX professional. The developers, in my history, my work history, they are coming for you. They want nothing to do with you. They see you as a threat. That makes for a toxic work environment. Then people keep doing it anyway because it's cheaper. But if you don't pay the money up front, you certainly lose it in the end. So the money's coming out of your pocket one way or another. So you can either pay people who deserve. You can bring Josh in and have him do it. Or you can bring Joe Blow, who's been a developer for the last 15 years and went to one of those, learned how to be a UXer in 6 months and has no idea what's going on with UX and has no idea about how you go from A to Z in the success of the project and has no empathy for anybody but his bank account.
So I actually work in engineering software and things like this, so those are my audience, and I've actually successfully changed some hearts and minds by leveraging design thinking. And
Awesome.
this. But I think I know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But I would love for you to speak more about like how organizations have sort of tried to like bridge these gaps or integrated teams or something like that.
You'll see that on UX Sensor. I'll start talking about it because the big name people are not going to do it, and I don't necessarily fault them. But on the flip side of that coin, I wish they would say more about it. The only one I know that says anything regularly is Eric Schaefer of Human Factors International. He actually has a test that you can give in your company that will help keep you from hiring what I call posers, retrofits, and upstarts. Because they're going to take money from your company and they're going to take jobs from UX people who deserve it. And who's going to suffer in the end? Users. And I see the same thing. I saw it happening in the world of instructional design. As part one of the reasons I got out, because it was being flooded with people who were just making PowerPoint presentations and reading every slide. They knew nothing about the science of instructional design, so consequently people weren't being trained. Then when the company goes to cut budget, well, why don't we get rid of those trainers? Because they're not really bringing us any benefits anyway. UX is heading down the same exact path. So I fight for it. Hey! So let's move forward. So again, the more mature an organization is, I sort of said this, but I got to read this because I don't want to miss anything. But the more mature an organization is, the more they will outperform the competition. This is a known fact. Coca-Cola did not become one of the top companies for user experience and customer experience on a whim. They made the right investments, they brought the right people, they listened to the voice of the customer, they made changes, they empathized, and yeah, they might have some dips here and there, but every company does. But they rebounded really, really, really well. There's a reason why Google is successful as it is. There's a reason, you name the company, they're successful, whether they're small or large. Everybody's dipping their toe into the world of UX, but the more mature you are, that's where you really get the big bang for your buck. UX maturity levels provide a means of examination, so you can look at it, several schools of thought, and you'll see them here shortly. It helps you provide a way to measure your status, your progress, and it helps you to establish goals. If a company realizes that if there's 5 levels, depending upon the school of thought you subscribe to, if there's 5 levels, okay, we see ourselves at level 2 right now. We used to have to constantly evaluate. When I was at Bosch, I was the manager of UX for Bosch, and they said it was the most successful implementation of UX in the company with over 385,000 employees. We would constantly report on our maturity level. We would tell you where we were and why. We even evaluated each project's maturity level. What did the project reflect from a maturity standpoint, and trying to grow the whole organization? And we had bonuses based on things on that line. So they were doing a good job with that. So as stated, let's take a real quick look at 5 usability or UX maturity models. This is probably the first one that became public, and still today has a great deal of popularity. I'll show you one of the reasons why. There's like people move away from the 10 heuristic standards that he established a little bit. It tends to be somewhat dated, and not because of the steps here, not because of these steps, but because of something else I'm going to show you in a moment. I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but hostility toward usability, say everybody starts there. Then, let me go on to the next slide, and I'll break this all down here. Nobody wants to hear about users. That's the mindset that Jacob Nielsen talked about. Then you go from there. When people start listening, then the developers start to get involved. I posted this to LinkedIn, and there was a small riot about how developer-centered user experience, where everybody is relying upon intuition. It's pretty much a free-for-all. It's design anarchy, essentially. You have no structure. Yeah, software design life cycles, you have agile. Some people, they say they're doing design thinking. It's really design anarchy, because they don't want to be responsible or accountable to anyone, but you're going to be accountable to the customer in the end. So why not have it higher? So at any rate, intuition, working from gut. You'll have some successes, but that doesn't mean that you did anything right, so you need to be careful of that. And then one of my favorite words in the entire world, one of my top 5 favorite words is skunkworks. I love this word. And this is where the stakeholders, yeah, some of us have been here, they've got designers on board, they are experts, but nobody values them. And so it's free for all on steroids, essentially. Essentially, in his mindset, you really don't start making UX progress. You're not really doing anything until you get beyond level 3. Here's why this is tough. Because he assigns a timeline. You talk to somebody about this, if you want to become a user-driven corporation, it'll take you approximately 40 years to get there. How many companies are going to buy into this program? So for this reason, this is why I personally think that it's useful to see, but you're not going to sell this at all. It's going to take you approximately 20 years to integrate it. And that depends upon the size of the organization. So this is not like etched in stone, but it's a guideline. You can still use it. You got to throw away the timelines though, and try to manage it as best you can. This is one of those unfamiliar ones that I talked about from Zebia Group, and one of the reasons I like this is because it's easy to assimilate, it's easy to apply, it's more practical than some of the other ones, and he's got they've got 6 levels. The first one is where people are hostile toward users. You have level 2, minimal interest, and especially if you have a large company or UX is growing, there's always somebody that will support you and somebody else that you have a hard time overcoming. You have to manage them. You get to the point where people are invested, then they get committed, and then when you can get to the point where you're invested, now you can really start making progress. As the UX person, we talked about being an advocate or an activist, as I call it. You still have to be a UX. One we didn't mention was UX evangelist. You do have to evangelize in-house about UX, no matter what's going on and no matter who you are. If you want UX to have a strong life cycle and a strong reputation within the organization, every member of that team needs to at least evangelize about UX. God forbid that the stakeholders are in a room and you're the only one in there and they want some input about UX, and UX's reputation is going to be dependent. Whether you like it or not, it's going to be dependent upon how you respond once they corner you and start asking you questions. So you have to jump on that bandwagon at some point in time. But this, if you can get here, most companies are going to be here these days about. and then you're going to go forward. Eventually you get embedded, you can get to a user-centered point. This is the one from Leah Bewley's talk on Envision a couple of weeks ago, and I thought this was interesting. It's not practical. I love her thought processes. I love Leah Bewley. But it's not practical to say that if we're going to go to level 1, she says level 1, and let me go here where I break it down. Level 1, deliverable and usability focus only. A lot of organizations are there. A lot of them are. Then you have the connectors. They are getting involved from a collaboration standpoint. This is where you'll see a lot of the design thinking take place. Everybody wants to have something to say, and everybody does contribute to the user experience. They do. There's only one driver, though. Only one person can drive at a time. Only one person. You don't have 8 people. I mean, I want somebody to draw a picture for me of a car with 8 seats and there's a steering wheel. You know that. You imagine where that car is going? We've sat in it before, whether we realize it or not. Then you have architects, they're more agile and lean, and they tend to be very structured, and they understand how UX is contributing to the profitability of the company because they're monetizing UX activity. So that's a good place to be. A lot of companies, they're trying to get there, but not quite yet. Then you have the scientists grouping. That's where people are, they're doing a lot of testing, they're doing a lot of learning, and there's a lot of conversion-oriented stuff. So a lot of KPI type of elements associated to UX, which is great because now you can explain your value better. Now you can do what I call speaking exec. They understand. When you start talking about what you're doing with cognitive load and stuff, you just lost a whole bunch of stakeholders. But when you start talking about KPIs and how that's going to affect the bottom line, they're all in. So we have to learn how to talk like that. And then you have the visionary level. This is where you get the people that are doing the innovation. There's a lot of foresight companies that are operating on a cross-platform level. That's pretty cool. And she says only, I believe it was 5%, was it? Yeah, 5%. Only 5% of companies, in her estimation, are visionary teams. So it's not necessarily practical, but it's something else to consider. This is the one guy that I think he has the most practical of all the usability maturity models that are out here. I mentioned a guy, nobody will know his name. How many of you ever heard of James Wondrak? It sounds like a name from off a Family Guy or something. It's like, but I love what he did here. And very realistic, very practical, easily attainable. This is easy to take off of this, take back to your organization and begin to shoot for it. This is because you can touch it. I can't do what Jacob Nielsen did because as soon as I tell my boss that it'll take us 20 years to get here, then the conversation is over. So, although there's great information there. First, it's unrecognized, 0 acknowledgement. These explanations are mine. At level 2, you start to get people interested. If you're on people, UX is on people's radar, and now you can start to gain some traction. Then you finally start getting some wins, and I do recommend if you're trying to go from level 2 to level 3, even from level 1 to level 2, find the low-hanging fruit in your organization and start bringing wins from a UX perspective, and then they'll start relating to it, and now you've got some momentum, and you'll start to get more people at the stakeholder level, at the executive level that are supporting you and buying in. Formal processes begin to emerge throughout the organization. Then people start to get committed, and they have to because it's in the processes now. But they start acknowledging UX, and they start making a place for UX. Hey, did you talk to UX about this? That's a great thing to hear. When you see people, well, did you talk to Shanisha about this? Did you talk to Josh? What did Josh have to say about this? Because I like to hear before we go forward, I want Josh's input. That's what we want. We want a seat at the table. So then you have engagement, where UX now has a viable presence. Still might be evolving, but it has a presence. And then it's embedded. And it's difficult to get to this point. You have to be committed to for the long haul to do this, but it's doable. It's doable. We stick to it. Again, I think that's really, really practical. This is one I did, and I thought I'd throw it in here. And again, something that's easy to consider, easy to examine, easy to pursue, where I started out with apathy, no genuine interest or true understanding on UX, no value on UX, and a lot of companies are there, even if they have UX people on board. A lot of companies are there. Then you have where people start to explore. They're starting to consider it. And I started thinking of, when I thought about this, I was thinking about when people are shopping. And they're going through the store, and they're going up and down every aisle. Or the old, you don't hear the phrase window shopping anymore. It's because people shop on the web so much now. You don't hear window shopping, but they start to explore. You're starting to give thought to things. You're not committed to anything, but you're at least entertaining. And way in the back of your mind, if you give me a reason, I'll dive in. But you got to give me a reason, so I'm just considering it. Then you get to the point where people start to adopt. They understand, they start to place value on UX, and then now we've got traction. You don't get traction until level 3 in this model. Then you get saturation. It's recognizable within the organization, and the increasing number of projects are starting to look at UX. Now you have momentum, now you're building something. And then at last, think about the Borg. You're assimilated. When you can assimilate the organization and everybody's walking around, not necessarily having things sticking out their head, but still the point where now it's a standard. You want UX to become a standard. And in this model, you can still reach this if you have detractors. I'll explain this on the web later in more detail, and I'm going to do a parallel one of this, and I'll explain it in a minute. So there's no shortage of maturity models. No shortage. Go to images.google.com and just type in UX maturity level if you want to see what I mean, and watch how that page populates. Everybody's got something to say about this, but it actually is addressing it it's addressing the topic from several angles. The question after all this, though, is, okay, so there are all these maturity models. What's in it for me? Because everything that we just looked at, as we looked at it, is based on the organization. When you get ready to go home for the day, is the UX maturity level, or are UX maturity models relevant to you as an individual? And the value proposition that I have is that it's an absolute yes. And so I'm going to talk to you real quickly, and then we'll be done and then I'll take some more questions, about 3 ways to use the maturity models to your own benefit as a UX professional. So number 1, it helps you if you stay on the same slide. You go back. The only thing about these things, they need UX on this. You bump into it constantly. Come on. That's rely on the good old. How about I put this down for now? I love it, but I keep bumping into it. All right, so the first one is how you interact with and manage stakeholders and teams. Yes, you can use maturity level models to help you with how you engage. So number 1, it helps you to identify it helps you to identify team potential. You can look at your team's potential. You can apply any maturity level, any maturity model, and you can examine, you can modify it based on what your needs are, and you can apply that to understand where your team stands and where it can go. Number 2, it helps you to understand team dynamics. This has been a lifesaver for me. I tend to apply maturity level, and Bosch really helped because we were doing it per project. Then I started doing it per individual. I have my own maturity level assigned to all my stakeholders. And so because of that, it helped optimize the way I interacted. And I was working with engineers. You guys know what Bosch is. And I work for automotive aftermarket, and so a lot of my customers were engineers, and you have to work to get along with an engineer. That's going to take some serious work and some serious immersion and emotional intelligence. And it took me a year and a half, but I ended up with a seat at the table with the engineers at Bosch, and it was like, has Darren seen this? What did Darren have to say? And I mean, we went from that great joy, and the extreme low was when I did some wireframes, and my fault. I was completely wrong when I did this. I did wireframes for a handheld diagnostic tool that we were making for Caterpillar, and I just did my work as if everybody understood. Big mistake. I did not consider, at that time, I did not consider the team dynamics when we were dealing with an external client, and they saw the wireframes and thought it was the final design. So you about know what happened. and it was a riot. And I was hanging from the street pole in front of the office, and then one of the creative people said, no, we'll do the look and feel. That's just a wireframe. Let him down, and all that kind of stuff. So, but if I had paid more attention to that, it would have been better. It would have been better. But we finally were able to get things done. But that's why you have to use the maturity level to understand who you're dealing with, so it helps you to know when you're making a presentation, how do I make this presentation? How do I, if I'm presenting wireframes, don't just send them off and pop up. Don't do that. Because you need to, and there needs to be an introduction. You need to help people understand. Don't send them a clickable prototype. And you're working in an agile environment, and so you're going to be quick and dirty about it, and it's not going to be completely functional. This doesn't work. I don't like this. And then you get all these, because people don't know what it is. People have to learn how to engage with UX professionals. It's not something that they're going to know how to do automatically, and we have to be the ones to help them to get there. It helps provide management cues, which is a little bit of overlap there, but you have, and we're not talking about you having UX people under you, we're talking about managing up. Because you have to manage the people, you have to manage your stakeholders, you have to manage your boss, you have to manage your boss's boss, because everybody has a perception and it's greatly dependent upon how you present UX, the UX world, and your value to the organization as well as to clients. Engaging the team status. How is the team doing? How successful are you? What do you need to do to go to the next level? Using maturity level or maturity models will help you to do that. It'll give you some ideas as to how to better do it. Second group, management and growth. When you are managing people, this is you as well as others. Gauge the maturity level of your candidates when you're hiring for UX positions. Understand where they are. And you might not come across anybody that's hostile towards UX, but you'd be surprised. Especially when you get all the people fudging UX qualifications these days. It is possible for something like that to happen, so we need to be careful. Identify maturity levels of your team members and develop growth plans. You can use maturity levels to see where a person is. And actually, you can take one. I'm going to create some that are just for managing people, so you understand where to go from A to Z. It fosters an understanding of your own maturity level and plan for your own personal growth. I see all those people coming out, so I'm getting antsy. I think they started 5 minutes before us. Lastly, helps optimize your job search. You can use, I remember I was planning to do this before you came in here. He did a great talk on the unicorn, on the UX unicorn, and how it doesn't exist. And he presented a post from an unnamed company and showed what they were really looking for in their job description. You can use maturity levels, your knowledge of UX maturity levels when you're looking for a new job. You can read between the lines and understand how mature that company is and whether or not you should go or need to go, or if you're diving into a cesspool. It's really dangerous. It's good value, or good skill to have. You can learn to value that position, a little bit of overlap there. This is the big one that I want to touch on, and I've already talked about this, so I'm going to skip this. A lot of opportunities, it looks like, man, this looks like a great job. Oh man, what a great company. And don't do like me, fall in love with company's name, and then you get in there and find out that you're in the wild, wild west. And that they don't really understand UX, or you didn't even ask any questions to help you during the interview to understand where they were on the maturity, from a maturity level standpoint. So you have to do that so you don't jump into these paradoxical opportunities. A lot of people, I've done it a few times. I know a lot of other people that have done it. You think it's great. I went to one company and they tried to turn me into a BA. We talked about UX during the interview. I sat down and started doing UX, and I mentioned, I think our app needs a heuristic analysis. Oh, forget that. We don't need that. And I went, oh my God. What did I do? And I knew. And they wanted a BA. So these are all things that we can do where the UX maturity levels are relevant to you. Don't let them go by the wayside. When you see articles about them, I encourage you, tap into them, read them, digest them, bookmark them, and go back, because there's so much to gain from the knowledge of UX maturity levels. So I just encourage you all to take advantage of that. I did did it. I'm done. Right. And I think we have time for a couple questions that you had a hand and I didn't answer because I knew I was getting behind.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the fact you mentioned about developers having constraints. So I've been in the technology industry for a couple decades, and I've seen how technology has adapted towards user needs, and I don't know how organizations at the level 1 where they're hostile to its users survive, because it's always important to remember that users are paying for technology to conduct business.
Yep.
It's not like we're creating technology and then the business changes to adapt to that technology. But overall technology is extensible, so if as UX professionals, if a developer is constraining you, I would encourage them that probably they have a knowledge gap and they need to learn that technology can be extended. So if JavaScript is not providing that particular object, there is a feature within that technology to extend it and have custom code added to suit the users. So I just want to, I come from the developer world, so I want to mention that. I want to mention that you've already got my opinion about how I think, and nothing is impossible in technology. And it is to serve users and not technology serving or users serving technology.
Yes.
So like you take XML as an example, if there's a developer who does not have that maturity level, they'll say, oh, this is not possible, because they don't know what they don't know. But if you go deeper into the technology, XML is extensible. So you can create your own attributes and ways to capture data.
That's good stuff.
So that's just my opinion. So I just want to, maybe, I don't know if there are any other developers in this room, but.
Well, I am a developer, and the business case for it too is that, if you can improve that experience, you're going to make more money off of your technology.
Yes, and over the years,
Google never changed the search box on purpose from a UX perspective, because that would disrupt a user's thing, but they have opened up, their index and improved, their programming, for JavaScript and things like this to get around some of those blockers, that were affecting the traffic.
And Google and Facebook are like at the leading edge of making UX more adaptable to user experience.
Yeah, Google invests a ton in user experience.
And they have open source frameworks for that. So if somebody tells you it's not possible or impossible, that person doesn't have all knowledge. So there is somebody who's created a framework somewhere which can solve that problem, or there's an opportunity to create a new framework and be unique in the world to solve that specific UX problem.
Yep. Yes, sir.
One thing we might want to talk about in a future time, or maybe even we talk together about, is UX backsliding. So I've been in organizations where we were at a certain maturity level, and then organizational changes happened. Agile became a thing, and then all of a sudden we had to adapt to a new way of doing things, and we actually lost ground.
Yep, that's a great point. It does happen. Yes, ma'am?
So, in regards to like the UX maturity and things that, I would like to know how can we in turn apply this to like the small businesses, that there's like a lot of small businesses that are up and coming. A lot of them online that I see like on the online business community. I'm not sure if you all see the online side of the business side of like Facebook and the social media and things like that. But there's a lot of people who are providing web design services. There are people who are providing even like content strategy, all of the different aspects that are under UX. How can we as like UX professionals kind of reach to that sector to kind of bridge the gap. I know how you strongly feel like those are not UX professionals and this,
No.
this and that, but they're still
They're still a
performing.
maturity level,
Yeah,
no
they're
matter
still
who's there.
performing in the field, so like the people who we are like spending this extra time, you know, and, you know, expertise on trying to improve the web, they're still presenting, you know, crappy
Yeah.
websites. Which then the user, so then that's the gap, because then the users are still accustomed to the crappy website.
Yeah.
And, you know, so then that affects the expectations of the users and stuff. So how can we as professionals, like, bridge that particular gap for those, like, freelancers out here in the market?
Well, everybody's got a UX material. We have to end on this question too. Every company has a UX material. It doesn't matter what the size is. I would say that a smaller company can move, thinking about the timeline that Nielsen presented, can move faster because you're jumping through less hoops. You have less red tape. You have less people that you have to manage in the process. So if you've got people that are gung-ho, being engaged from a UX standpoint, or you can jump by leaps and bounds from a maturity level standpoint, and especially when you have people at the top that are more bought in, then they're gonna pave the way, and they're gonna get those things out of the way, and you're gonna grow by leaps and bounds. And a lot of small companies, that's one of the reasons that some of them grew so quickly and made so much impact and became so profitable, is because they were extremely user-centered. One factoid to serve as a model, I didn't mention this, Design Management Institute, anybody familiar with their, they talk about how that the companies that are design-led outperform the competition. The number changes, but it's always in the 220s. Last one I think I saw was 224% outperforms their competition. So if a small company takes that model and applies it, they can do the same things, and then their volume and their profitability is just gonna keep going up, and then to Dr. Sherman's point, I love that, you just hope that they don't engage in any UX backsliding in the process. But yeah, everything we mentioned, it's applicable, and you can get it done faster. I've seen small companies though, they just fight. They're very hostile, and the problem with the hostility is that if a company is at a hostile maturity level, they tend to stay there for quite a while. That's not easy to overcome. So that's it. Thanks, guys.
Where can we find this presentation?
There's going to be a recording that's going to be made available.
Okay.
And, oh, sorry, I'm thinking ahead. This will at least be on SlideShare.
Okay.
As soon as I'm comfortable with uploading it, it could happen by the end of the day, and then I'll share it out on my LinkedIn profile, or they probably, I think, maybe providing them to carry in too. So they might have a place for you to get all the presentations that we give.
Great, thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. Enjoyed you guys.
Thank you. Can we get a picture with you?
Yeah.
Are we still live?
I don't know.
I'm not gonna be saying anything, anything inappropriate, but I just wanted to know if we're still
My wife
live.
would get a kick out of that. She got a strike the other night. Blow this thing. I don't know where it came from.
Just want to make it face-to-face.
Yes, sir.
introduction. I'm Jermaine Wilson.
Jermaine! How you doing, man?
Good, good.
You want
All right.
You're doing yourself.
I didn't know that was you.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll catch up.
Yeah, because we got lunch. I think one more talk and then there's lunch. So
Yep.
we'll get to make some ground.
How did you get the room that isn't 9,000 degrees?
Really?
Oh my god. This is the coolest room in this place. I know it's hot in here, but it's not as hot anywhere near as it is everywhere else.
Oh, question before you taste that. Question for you.
Yes.
Are you going to be rounding up all of the presentations?
Yes.
Okay, somebody was just asking how they could get a copy of it.
Yes, I will be rounding them all up, and they've actually now given us space to archive everything on the World IAA site, so we'll be
Nice.
good.
Nice, okay.
Because in the past I've had to actually email them out to people or put them on Dropbox or do something like that, so it's nice that they have.
All right.
Yeah, I'm interested in your, in the blog. I'm starting my own blog, and
Okay.
so this is like really, I'm like, I better get there.
And
You know, I
this-
live right here in Kent. I'm like,
Yeah.
I get there today.
Yeah, I'm going to incorporate while we're sitting here today, but I got all my logo wear coming, so I
There
need
you
to
go.
I need to get this wrapped up so nobody else gets the idea that I'm in trouble with all these shirts. I can't.
Thank you so
Oh,
much.
thank you. Thank you.
One
I'll
last
always know
question.
coming down here.
For me or for him?
You mentioned about PhD.
Yeah.
I have a master's in